Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast. Today brought to you by AdamandEve.com. For a limited time only, if you go to AdamandEve.com, you'll receive 50% off of just about anything when you type in the promotional code WEIRD. That's WEIRD, and you'll get 50% off of just about anything at AdamandEve.com. So welcome to Weird News, and we've been on a bit of a hiatus here at the podcast, but we're back, and what better time to be back than Halloween? As I'm sure you've noticed, it's that time of year, Halloween. How can you not notice? Halloween and Christmas are all mixed up in the stores, right? You've got Halloween in one aisle, Christmas in the next. If that's not weird, I don't know what is. Halloween. That's what we're going to talk about today. So what are your favorite Halloween traditions? Are you a trick-or-treat fan? Do you prefer to stay home and give out the candy? Do you like to take the kids out to go trick-or-treating? Do you like scary movies? Do you like cute Halloween movies? What are your favorite Halloween traditions? Do you prefer to just ignore it altogether? Do you like to decorate? We have a person in our neighborhood who decorates for Halloween the way a lot of people decorate for Christmas. His house is so much fun to drive by. He's got the projector with the ghosts going all over his garage door, and he's got lights and decorations, and it's really, really well done. It's a lot of fun. Weird News. Name of the podcast. I just wanted to take a quick side note. And, you know, when I think about weird is relative, right? Weird can be quirky. Weird can be strange. Weird can be offbeat. Weird can be just crazy. There's all kinds of weird. So when we say weird news, we mean just kind of stories that are out of the ordinary, right? Stories that you maybe haven't heard before, or bits of history that seem very odd when you read them. And this episode, as I said, is about Halloween. So Halloween itself is a little weird, right? I mean, you dress kids up as various things, anything from cute little outfits to scary outfits. You know, when you see a 4-year-old dressed up like a vampire and he's got blood dripping down his chin, that's a little weird in itself, right? When you see a tiny small child dressed up as some hideous creature, that's a little bit weird. And yet we do it every year and we love it. So what are the origins of Halloween? Well, you probably maybe have heard this before. Halloween, in the church, they celebrate on November 1st, All Saints' Day. So All Saints' Day is preceded by All Hallows' Eve, what we now know as Halloween, right? It originally started with Celtic Ireland and England and the festival of Samhain. That's spelled Samhain. Speaking of weird pronunciation, that's a weird pronunciation, right? I'm sure it's not weird if you understand how the language works, which I don't. I don't know how you get Samhain out of Samhain, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So they believed that on that day, one day a year, on the festival of Samhain, that the veil between worlds was thinner than usual, right? So you had the dead would rise again and walk amongst the living as ghosts. So the tradition became that you wanted to appease those ghosts, right? You didn't want to make them angry. You didn't want them wandering around that one day of year and being mad at you. So you put out food, wine, and to appease the ghosts. You also didn't want the ghosts to know you were there. You didn't want them to find you. So the tradition of wearing some sort of costume, some sort of disguise, so that you could walk amongst the ghosts and not be recognized. That was the tradition of Samhain. And then in the 8th century, as often happened with pagan festivals, the church decided to try to Christianize that holiday a little bit. That's where All Saints Day came into play. And so it was a day to honor all of the dead, all of the saints, whether known or unknown. So, they often take a date that there was a pagan festival on and tried to update it a little bit. And that's what happened with All Saints Day. But as also often happens, a lot of people decided they could have their pagan festival and celebrate the Christian one too. So they kind of kept some of those traditions from All Hallows Eve or Samhain and kept All Saints Day as well. And November 1st in the church is still All Saints Day, and you celebrate those who have gone before. But the day before, Halloween. In the time of the famine, the potato famine, then people from Ireland started coming over to America, and they brought some of those traditions with them. One of the traditions was giant bonfires on Samhain. That kind of got toned down into carving gourds and using candles. So rather than a giant bonfire, you had a much smaller gourd with the light in it, but that was the origin of jack-o'-lanterns. And then it wasn't until, I think, the 20th century when trick-or-treating came into play more, especially in the 1950s. It became more popular. It's unsure exactly how that evolved, although there is the theory that it came from something called souling, and that was where during this time, around the same time as Samhain, some of the poor people would go around their communities and they would, in exchange for a small loaf of bread or a roll called soul bread, they would pray for the deceased of that family, and in exchange they would receive this gift of soul bread. So you can see where that may have come into play in terms of that. And then there's another tradition that says that the young folk of the community would go out and tell stories or sing songs or tell jokes, and in exchange they would receive wine or money or food offerings in exchange for that. So you can see where all these things kind of get pulled together into what we now know as trick-or-treating, which is still a little bit different than their origins, but you can definitely see some of those roots there as to how those things got started. And that is Halloween. That's the beginning of Halloween, the origins of Halloween. I'm wondering how much of that you knew. I knew some of it, but I had never heard bits and pieces of it, and to see it all put together I thought was really fascinating. And then the way that it's evolved, and it's now something like a $6 billion industry each year between the buying of costumes and the buying of decorations and the buying of a ton of candy, right? We buy a lot of candy. In fact, my husband likes to be that guy in the neighborhood who buys the full-size candy bars or king-size candy bars or movie theater boxes of candy. No, I'm not going to tell you where we live because I really don't want you to come to my house on Halloween expecting us to give you giant boxes of candy. He loves to show a movie on the side of the house. He just loves Halloween and he loves to go all out. And so we've gone from, the veil being thin and the dead coming back to life to walk, not coming back to life, but walking the earth as ghosts, to small children, teenagers, even adults, trick-or-treating, decorating, watching a movie on the side of the house, right? If that's not a little bit weird, I don't know what is. We are actually going to take our first break of the podcast, and when we come back, we'll be talking more about Halloween and some weird ghost stories that I found regarding not about Halloween, but Halloween. You should tell ghost stories, right? So stay tuned, and we will be right back with the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast. So here's a question for you. Have you been thinking about spicing things up in the bedroom? Have you been maybe fantasizing about surprising your lover with an adventurous new toy, or maybe an adult movie? Well, here's an offer you won't be able to resist. All you have to do is go to adamandeve.com for a limited time only, and you'll get 50% off of just about any item on their website. But that is not all. Oh no. When you select your one item of 50% off, you'll also receive 3 free adult DVDs for, a little inspiration, plus a free extra gift that's so sensual we can't mention what it is on this podcast. It's a mystery. It's so sensual. You have to find out what it is. And to top it all off, they'll even throw in free shipping on your entire order. No, they're not kidding. No, this isn't weird news. This is real. So check out adamandeve.com today for this special offer. Get 50% off one item when you type in WEIRD. That's WEIRD for the offer code upon checkout. When you do, you'll get 3 free DVDs, a free extra gift, and that free shipping. Just use our offer code WEIRD, WEIRD, at adamandeve.com. Again, that's WEIRD, WEIRD, adamandeve.com. Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast. We are talking this episode about Halloween, and I said before the break that we would move on to some weird Halloween ghost stories. Ghost stories, of course, can be, sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're really, really scary, and sometimes they're very weird when it comes right down to it. Do you have any weird, scary, silly ghost stories? I would love to hear them. If you want to share them with me on social media, that would be awesome. This is not really a ghost story, but it is kind of weird. A couple years ago, my husband and I were driving to work, and we worked together at the time, so we got to carpool. And we're driving down the road and came to a stoplight, came to an intersection, and my husband looks over and he says, "Oh my gosh, look at the car next to us." So next to us is a minivan, soccer mom. Well, I don't know that she was a soccer mom, but she could have been a soccer mom, right? She's in her minivan, and her passenger happened to be a full-size skeleton. Not a real skeleton, I'm going to assume, but a skeleton. I really don't think that this works in the carpool lane, but hey, who am I to judge? So she's driving around. It was Halloween, it was October. She's driving around with a skeleton in her passenger seat. And my husband, being the extrovert that he is, rolls down his window, and she had her window rolled down, and he strikes up a conversation with her. And she said she did it actually as kind of a joke to embarrass her kids, but it didn't embarrass them. They thought it was hilarious. And so she left it. She was thinking about maybe putting a Santa hat on it and keeping it through Christmas. I don't know. I think it loses a little something if it's for Christmas, not Halloween. Halloween? Funny, right? Christmas, you're driving around, you see a skeleton in a Santa hat. That's just a little sad. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, that's one of my sillier stories of Halloween. So, ghost stories. Everyone has their favorite ghost stories, right? Everyone loves to tell stories, around the campfire, or tell stories at sleepovers if you're younger, and try to scare the pants off of your friends. There are some weird ghost stories out there, though, and I would like to share a couple of them with you. So, have you heard the ghost story about the hairy toe? Yeah, I said that, hairy toe. It's an American folktale, and it is, I'd never heard of it, but apparently it's fairly popular. It's about a woman. The story varies depending on where you hear it. So if my version varies from the story you heard, just know that, it can vary from different regions, or as people have heard it differently over the years. Basic plot point is that a woman finds a disembodied toe in her garden. I like that it's a hairy toe. I'm picturing, a hobbit foot with lots of hair on it. She finds this hairy toe in her garden, and what does she do with it? Now, what do you do if you find a hairy toe? I'm calling the police. This is probably a time when there weren't phones, and you didn't just call the police when you found a toe in your garden. No, this woman decides that she's going to take it home and make a stew out of it. And then later that night, a ghost appears. Sometimes a murderous ghost appears. Whether he's murderous or not, he is angry. He wants his severed toe back. He is mad that she did not just leave the toe where she found it, but took it home and made a stew out of it. Okay, there's a lot of things wrong with this story. First of all, who finds a toe and decides to make stew out of it? Really? the ghost part of this story is not the weirdest part. I mean, hey, if I'm a ghost and I've lost my toe and somebody took it, I'd be mad too. I would haunt that woman too. That's not the weird part. She made a stew out of it, people. Why? Was she really, 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 really hungry? Okay, we can maybe give her that. Maybe she was starving. It's still a dismembered toe. God only knows what kind of diseases you could get from that thing. I mean, really. So I think basically what I'm going to say to you is you find a severed toe in your garden, don't make a stew out of it, okay? Please? Just for me? Anyway. Oh, and also, why is it hairy? Why is that specific in the story? Because the story is called The Hairy Toe. It's bad enough that she ate a toe, that she made a stew out. Did she shave the toe first? Please tell me she cleaned this toe up a little bit. Woman, you are crazy, and I do not approve of your choices of stew meat. Yeah, that's one of the strange ghost stories that we have going on in the world. I don't know, would you tell that as a scary story around the campfire? Probably not. Maybe you would. Maybe you're drunk. I don't know. Hey, I'm not here to judge. Whatever you do around the campfire and how you tell your ghost stories, cool, man. So here's another one, and this is also an American folktale. It originated apparently in Missouri, and if you are from Missouri and I get this wrong, I apologize. You cannot believe everything you read all the time, but this is a story of, well, an interesting kind of pig ghost, I guess. So the story goes, and again, if you know a different version of this story, I apologize. The story goes that there was a powerful, but, basically harmless, maybe benevolent witch who lived alone with a pet razorback hog that she named Rawhead. Who names their pet Rawhead? Anyway, whatever. Not here to judge on that. You name your pets whatever you want to name them. But anyway, this pet was interesting, not only for its name, but also because it was able to walk and talk like a man. Hey, she's a witch. She maybe enchanted this pig. Maybe she was lonely, right? So up until now, all right, a little quirky, not bad. But one day, apparently, a hunter is either out and sees this pig, or whatever his reasonings are. The hunter shoots the pig and butchers the meat and makes a day's income on the meat. Talking pig, walks and talks like a man, enchanted. Probably he could have made a better choice and made some more money off of that pig. But hey, we're not here to question we're totally here to question the hunter's motives. Anyway, he killed the pig. You can imagine that the powerful, but up until this point, benevolent witch was not happy. He took her pet razorback, who could walk and talk like a man. So maybe he was more like her boyfriend? I don't know. So she's infuriated. And so she casts a spell over the bones of her beloved pet so that they could walk and talk again. But it's no longer the same, as often happens when you try to bring things back from the dead, people. It never goes well. Rawhead returned as a bloody, skeletal something or other who was sworn on vengeance. He was going to track that hunter down, and he was going to take him out. So he, but not before he apparently decides that he needs some sort of outer covering for his bones. So he covers these bones that have been enchanted and brings him back with several other dead animals. Because, hey, the more the merrier. So he's got the fangs of a panther, the claws of a bear, and the bushy tail of a raccoon. And when he meets up with his own killer, then a lot of versions of the story include this little dialogue, and I'm just going to read that for you. And I don't know if this is the author's interpretation, but the version I'm reading starts every sentence with "Land of Goshen." So, Land of Goshen, what have you got those big eyes for? He snapped, thinking the kids were trying to scare him with some crazy mask. To see your grave, Rawhead rumbled very softly. Land of Goshen, what have you got those big claws for? He snapped. You look ridiculous. To dig your grave, Rawhead intoned softly, his voice a deep rumble that raised the hairs on the back of the hunter's neck. Land of Goshen, what have you got that crazy tail for? To sweep your grave, Rawhead boomed. And so basically, this does sound a little familiar, right? Little Red Riding Hood, big eyes, big tail, big teeth. But this is not Little Red Riding Hood. This is the legend of Rawhead, who gets his revenge. And some say he still haunts different places in Missouri, wandering around, looking very, very odd with his mismatched body parts and the fact that he used to be a pig who could walk and talk like a man. So there you go. I'm just going to leave that there for you because I do not know what else to say about Rawhead. I really don't. In fact, I think I'm going to take another break. So stay tuned and I will be right back with the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast. We are talking about Halloween and just talked about a couple of weird American folk tales that are ghost stories and have very odd characters in them. I'm wondering what your favorite ghost stories are. I would love to hear about them. If you want to hit me up on social media, we are on Twitter and Facebook. Those are probably the easiest places to leave comments. GSMC Weird News. Check it out. I'm also wondering what your favorite ghost stories are, but have you ever seen a ghost or had a weird experience that you couldn't explain? We always say that our house is haunted. My parents' house is haunted because not that we've ever seen the ghost, but because there are interesting smells. In the upstairs bathroom, you often smell pipe smoke, which I don't know. All these things could probably be explained. I'm not a scientist. You often smell pipe smoke in the upstairs bathroom. Downstairs, you smell a woman's perfume and not perfume that anyone in my family wears. So we say that there is the upstairs male ghost and the downstairs female ghost, although sometimes the upstairs ghost does come downstairs. My mom says one night she was getting ready for bed and she was in the kitchen. And she was standing between the pantry and the refrigerator when she heard a very polite male voice say, "Excuse me, please." This was about 2 a.m. She was the only one awake. She said it didn't really scare her that he was very polite, just said, "Excuse me, please." That creeps me out. Sometimes when I visit my parents and I have to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I'm like, "Oh, please don't talk to me. Please don't talk to me, Mr. Ghost." Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. I have smelled the different smells, and again, those could be explained somehow. The only experience that I have had with our family ghost is I was sitting in the living room with a friend of mine when I was about, second or third grade. Just sitting there. My parents were outside. I don't know where my siblings were, but my friend and I, were alone in the living room, and we both distinctly felt someone walk by us. Felt them walk by us and heard the footsteps. And of course, being small and emotional children, we screamed and ran screaming out of the house, just terrified because we'd had this experience. Again, I'm sure there are things that could explain that. I, again, am not a scientist. I don't know what those explanations would be exactly, but hey, I have never physically seen a ghost. I'm not going to say there aren't any ghosts because there's so much in this universe that we cannot explain. And who am I to say that something does or does not exist? So I'd love to hear your ghost stories. What have you had for experiences? And not like those, you ever watch some of those ghost hunter shows? Sometimes they're really spooky, and other times it's just people running around a dark room going, "Oh my God, did you see that?" Well, no, because it was just you saying, "Oh my God, did you see that?" Sometimes they're a lot more realistic, but there are a few that just make me roll my eyes. Speaking of rolling my eyes, I'm just going to share a couple more stories that I read while I was searching for weird ghost stories for this episode. And Japan has some really interesting ghost stories, and maybe they don't translate as well. I don't know exactly, but often they involve... Well, I'm just going to tell you the one story that I read, and I believe the word was shimiri. And this is simply a ghost. There's a samurai warrior out walking one night and encounters a ghost or something, whatever it is. It's a naked man, but not just any naked man. Apparently this naked man bends over and moons the samurai. Weird enough. But where his, what's the politest way to put this? Bunghole? How's that? Is that pretty good? Where that should be is an eyeball. And that's a ghost story. Yeah, that would freak me out a little bit. Or I don't know what I would think. I would, okay, a naked man mooning me, and then an eyeball? Because I just don't know what to say on that one. What would you say on that one? Let me know what you think, because that's interesting. And if you know more about that story and can explain it to me, I would love to hear that, because I don't get it. Another story, I think this one was from Malaysia, involves a very large woman who smothers you with her breasts. That's a ghost story. And as that wasn't weird enough, the breasts are on her back, and they're apparently really, really, really large breasts. So yeah, those are some weird stories that I read about from around the world. Seem to involve body parts, toes, eyeballs, breasts, body parts from different animals. You name it, we got weird body parts. And on that note, I think that's probably where we're going to wrap this up for today, because that's enough weird ghost stories for 1 week, I think. But thank you so much for joining me for this Halloween edition of the GSMC Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast. I hope you'll join me again next time for some more weird news of various natures. There's so much weirdness in the world, we could talk about any number of subjects. So join me, send me your ideas for weird stories, or send me your ghost stories. Just interact with me. As I said, you can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter. Those are really good places to interact. We're on Instagram. We're on Tumblr. So come find us on social media. You can also find all of our podcasts at www.gsmcpodcast.com. You can download those podcasts on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and really anything that you use, any app that you use for your mobile devices. You can find our podcasts. Just type in GSMC and you should be able to find all 20 of our podcasts. We would love for you to join us to tune into other podcasts. Thank you again for joining me. As I said, I hope you'll join me again next time. In the meantime, keep it weird, folks. Keep it weird.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.